So they still have a full house.
That's never been developed.
You got their own camera? Yeah. This is my first time, so yeah.
Does anybody watch that 9 o'clock?
I had 8:58 on my phone.
Can you push it? Who's got a watch that says 9?
My watch says 9, my phone says 8:58.
We will
8:50.
call planning board meeting to order for January 29th, 2019. May I hear
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
well, let's do the agenda first.
I adopt the agenda. I'm sorry.
Okay. Anybody got any other comments? Move to, all those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Minutes, November minutes, and December, there was no meeting, so we don't really have to approve of that. I looked at those minutes, I saw nothing wrong with them.
All motion to approve.
Motion by Joe to approve,
Second.
second by John. All in favor? Aye. At this time, I'd like to welcome Peter Patton, our newest member to the planning board. We all know Peter. Long-time community member. Have any opening comments that you'd like to make?
Well, I'm excited to be here, and I thank y'all for having me come on this board. And I hope I can add something.
Well, you certainly don't want you to try.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
At this time, I will turn the meeting over to Preston for the election of the chair, vice chair, and secretary. Secretary is usually, we don't elect them because we always use a town person to take the minutes.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think we just go through it, and each position will elect and confirm it, and then, like you said, the secretary has typically been staff member, and I think, unless there's some disagreement, we'll continue with that. But because it's in the charter and the ordinance, I think we probably should do it, just a matter of formality. But I guess at first we'll elect a chair, we'll take nomination, and then
Nominate Pete Chamberlain.
Pete Chamberlain's nomination. Any second or
Second.
third? Okay. Robbie is second, and Mr. Antonell the third. We'll call the vote, I guess. All in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? All right. For the vice chair, do we have any nominations?
John Hoffman.
John Hoffman nominated by Mr. Chair, and then seconded by Robbie. Any other nominations, discussions? Call the vote. All in favor? All opposed? All right. And then secretary, if there's a nomination for staff to do that, just let us know.
Nominate staff to do that.
Okay.
Second.
All right. All in favor? All right. I think that concludes the organizational business, unless there's anything else. That will be Pete Chamberlain as the chair, and then vice chair would be John Hoffman, and then secretary would be staff Preston Yates. All right, I'll give it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, let's all make sure your mics are on. Oh,
Green light on.
so you got a green light. The first order of business we have is old business and the comprehensive plan update. The comprehensive plan, as most of us know, we're a few months behind on it, primarily because it takes a while to put together a strong questioning survey, and we got 500 some responses to it. So analyzing the data, we have and will distribute to anyone who wants it that data and the summation of it. And there's Preston is going to want to go over the initial survey findings, and then the additional analysis he's going to create some changes in some of the chapters of the long-range plan, which was the purpose of this. We also have the opportunity to have another, Jeff Fabry has volunteered to take that data, and this business he's in, so he wants to do it. Great. I mean, he's not on the planning board, but he sure can assist us. Let him take the data and analyze it also, and then it works with Preston, and we'll get all that information in the chapters. But I'd say we're probably about 3 months behind on where we thought we would be at this time last year on the revision of the long-range plan. Preston, if you want to give us those initial survey findings, or
Yeah, I'll start just for the benefit of those, Mr. Patton and others who may not have been involved so far. This is our overview of the comp plan timeline that we initially established at the beginning. Like the chairman said, that we are about a month or two behind. We wanted to have this survey done earlier so that we could be in the full-fledged of the data analysis portion of it, which we had in August, September area. We've done the analysis of everything we've received so far, but the survey took some time to prepare. We had some meetings on it. Yeah, we wanted to get it right, have a lot of input on it, and that just took some time. So that's where we are. But for the most part, I think that we should be able to over February, March, implement the analysis, do the data analysis, implement those changes, if any, into the plan, into the reviews that we already have, and then have we had a public hearing scheduled for like February area. I think we'll probably do that in March or April. That will be to present our findings, present more of a almost complete plan, so that the public will get a look at it before you guys adopt it and then send it to council for approval. So that's kind of where we are in the process of that. This survey, we opened it in early December, I think December 1st, and we just closed it in January 15th, I believe it was. So, I will go over those analysis now, unless anybody has any questions on where we're at in the process.
Preston, I had a question on that. On the public hearing, that's actually a public meeting, like from 4 to 6 one night?
That will be an afternoon or evening meeting where we can have the public come in specifically for just reviewing the comp plan. We'll present that comp plan and hopefully get any input. We'll have it in a format or a stage that hopefully is ready for approval, but if we get comments, then certainly we'll take those and incorporate them into.
And Preston, the committee will get to see the edited or updated version before we go to the public hearing.
Yes, yeah. What I'm hoping to have is over the next couple of months, start getting you the data analysis and the new chapters, any changes that we made from either the analysis or the workshops or anything like that. That way you can kind of get it, and then in either February, you guys can approve the chapters that we've looked at, or we can wait until March and do them all at once, however you guys want to do that. But you'll get a look at it before we have that public meeting. Then you'll set that meeting date, and we'll have that public meeting, present it to the public, get any feedback from them, and then go from there.
as we have chapters 1 and 3 already done, we were going to approve those in December.
Yeah, those
We've gotten all the feedback. And what I envision is that as we get a chapter ready, it gets dispersed to the planning board to review for comments, like we did on chapters 1 and 3. If you have comments, we'll put them back in. If, there were no changes that came from anybody on, except we said there may be some small graphic changes, just to make the wording flow better, because trying to fit the pictures in and the words, and then you start proofing it, you say, this ends here, and it doesn't really, it's ending on the next page, so there may be some minor things, but not changing the content.
Yeah, for the first chapters that we did review, there weren't any substantial changes. Like you said, there will probably be some formatting and that sort of thing that come through. But certainly, as I get the analysis done, I will forward that to you, and then as I get updates into the chapters, I'll go ahead and send those to you. So you, and they may not be, they may be 1 or 2 at a time or whatever. That you'll just start receiving those. And then we'll talk about them in our regular meetings. And then once we get to a point where we're ready to present it to the public, we'll go from there.
Thank you.
All right.
I have a question. Is there any way that we can find from this previous survey to this survey how many things have changed, or are they all running?
That will be part of the analysis. If there are, and certainly if there's anything that you see that you would like to question or look at further, or there's right now what we have is sort of a basic analysis of the data, but no sort of collaborative or correlation type information. So we're not really comparing one question to another or one question from a previous survey to another. We're just looking at what was the answer to that specific survey and what kind of percentages of people do we get for that question. But we can go as deep as we need to kind of get the analysis that we're comfortable with saying, yeah, we think we feel good about what we've, and if we see something in the data that is different or suggests something different than what we received in the workshops, and that might be a good one to say, oh, we want to look at this a little further because this is not what we heard in the workshops or something like that. So, but that's kind of where we are right now, and certainly if there's anything that we need to look at deeper or further, we will do that. And I will start looking at the questions that we did before versus the questions we've got now, and see how much they've changed. If they've changed a lot, maybe we can look at why or why not. Or
that's one thing, because you're always going to get a few points, or sometimes a few points one way or the other on.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, if there's like that one year and that next
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, we made, we based our assumptions off of that last survey in the workshop. So if there's a difference in what we find in the new survey, then certainly we may want to look at what our goals or objectives were for that revolve around that question, and then see if we need to adjust it in. All right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so we'll just go through the building address. So one of the things that I've been working on is, when we did the survey, we decided we were going to have an address field, and everybody was going to be required to provide a Beech Mountain address. So we got 100% response on that, so that's a good sign. Everybody did put in an address. What I'm doing now is, is going through and validating those addresses for a Beech Mountain address. Hopefully, probably 90% of them will. We can what we call geocode, basically put it into the computer and it'll locate it and say this is where it's at. For the other 10%, we may have to go through individually and locate it and make sure that it's within the town and meets the criteria. So, this was on average, how many months do you spend on Beech Mountain? You can see the average was a little over 5. The median was 5. This is one of the ones that I think I started doing further breakdown on it just so that we could kind of see the way it broke down. The way I just thought that it might be a good way to break it down is a 0 to 5 months, a 6 to 11, and then a full time. And you can see that 62% of the respondents reported being less than half-time. So that, and then about 22% were full-time, and then another 16% were somewhere in the middle there between half-time and full-time. So that's the kind of further analysis that we can do on these types of questions, looking maybe to see if that affects the responses. We can actually separate out those who responded to say that they were full-time versus less than half-time, and say, well, did they have different preferences? Was, sometimes when you average it over everybody, you sort of lose maybe preferences for specific groups. But that will be one of the further analysis that we do upcoming in the next month or two. In a typical year, you can see that there was quite a few of the all, and then the bigger months were the summer months. So the winter months for spending time. The question, I believe, said which months do you spend time on Beech Mountain? One thing I did find that when I was looking at the data were that some people put all, but on their previous question only put 3 months, but they actually spend a little bit of time each month, so they did put all. So I was initially I thought all was all the full-time residents, but it's not. So it is people who just come out there for the weekends on a regular basis. But in percentage-wise, there was about 40% of people said that they spend some time up here every month, either full-time or not. Question 4 was, if you own property, is it used primarily by yourself or your family, or is it rent or a business? It was primarily the family. I think that predominated the responses. There were some operated business, which we did want to see if there were differences in opinions based on business owners. So we'll be able to separate those out and see how they responded versus residents. Recreational activities, hiking, walking, and visiting local attractions were the highest scoring. This was a select all that apply, so kind of let people decide what they do most of. What was it? Yeah, check all that apply. So there were some others. There were quite a few others. So we'll have to look at those and try to quantify them as best we can. Some of them dog park, other. Some might just put other, gardening, concerts. So we'll try to come up with some sort of quantifying measure to group these or categorize these if we can. If there are anything that we didn't talk about, there's gardening and bird watching. Those are probably things that we didn't think about to put in. So we'll try to quantify those and come up with some information on that. This one we asked people to check only 5 of what was most important. Climate and beauty and vistas were the highest scoring. Another one was the safe community feel. So there was a lot of answers on that one. We had a lot of variable answers. So, but beauty and climate tend to be the highest, and I think that assumption was what we had before as well. This one we changed, I think, from a previous question to allow check all that apply instead of just checking one. And it came out quite differently than the other one. I think that's on the top of your, you can see that in that response it was a quaint resort town was 66%. Which we had 68% say that, but then we had 65% say that it's a cool summer alternative. So we'll probably need to look at that and just see if, how those choices kind of lined up, if there were multiple choices that people made that go along with it, or if there was one that really stood out more than another. But it does look like that Quaint Resort Town is the primary one, and then there were some other kind of secondary considerations for the town. This was another one that we did from the last survey. I think we took out some definitions to not be leading in any way. And I think it was fairly consistent, but I think we had a stronger support for managed growth than we did before. I think before it was a little more split in the perception towards growth. So that may be one that we look at versus the old survey. Significant weaknesses: declining or vacant structures, seasonal economy, and limited dining options. It was pretty spread out, but I think a lot of people's concern were the declining structures or vacant structures. So I think we kind of knew that anecdotally, but this probably confirms that.
And how would you infer from that what actions and how it impacts how we write the chapter on
Well, I think
how we deal with housing and
I think it reaffirms that our goals that we set to to clean it up and to modernize or to keep it attractive. We can also look at other ways to do that. I think that just really tells us that we were on the right track with setting those goals and that sort of thing. Unless there's, I have to look back at the workshops and see if there are any other comments on those goals, but we certainly want to keep that as part of our goal list. This is the rating of the community appearance. The median was 4, the average was about 3.8, 3.9. So that's a pretty good number. I mean, everybody wants to see improvement, but they're not totally discouraged by the appearance of the mountain. So, and I think that goes along with the next question, which was how important is the aesthetics of the mountain. That scored really highly again. I think I started analyzing these just to get a breakdown of where the responses were. You can see that the rating, there were quite a few 4s, and then 3 and 5s. There were about a quarter of the people said that the town had a 5. The importance, the one to the right there, talks about how people rated the importance of the aesthetics, and you can see that 5 was nearly 60% of people said 5, and then another 30% said 4. So it's very important. I think we probably knew that. It really confirms that our image and our aesthetics are very important to not only the town but the residents as well. So.
Preston, do you think we'll be able to discern where the concern about aesthetics of the town, what the drivers are, where the most concern is? For example, we know declining structures and vacancies is important, and people are concerned about that. That makes sense. But I'm wondering if there are other areas, if we can specify what it is, where the concern about aesthetics are.
I mean, we could look at our workshop information, and we can kind of infer what people might. At this point, we're really unless we want to go back and resurvey or anything like that, then we're probably going to have to make some assumptions. But the thing of it is we know that it's important, and then we have the goal in our plan. If we want to, or if we think it's maybe a plan for aesthetics or something that I think we came up with some architectural guidelines for the commercial area. But maybe there's other things that we can do, not in terms of the comprehensive plan, but other small area plans or something that we can, and that may be a policy or something that we say, okay, we would like to go further into this to try to achieve better results or something. This is the, which would you consider assets or to the character or quality of life on Beech Mountain? Friends came in very highly, the resort, the club, obviously the trail system, the rec center and the people all scored really highly. We can look at this and maybe see if there are any correlations with the selections of these. I think we allowed people to choose as many as they wanted on this one. Yeah. So they all scored fairly high. These were items that came out in our workshops, so that's where we had a good idea that these were important to people, and I think most of them scored really highly on that. This was a question again we had from the old survey. I think we may have changed it somewhat just to make it clear what we were asking. How important is paving of primary connecting gravel roads in Beech Mountain? I think it scored the average was 3.5, the median was 4. I don't recall what we scored on the last one, but we'll take a look at that and see if there's change in that. And this is maybe another one that we look at, break it down by resident type and see if there's a group of people that prefer it more so than others, or if there's a reason why that the scoring is the way it is. This was another one that we took from the old survey in terms of commercial property. Were the ski area, the town hall, commercial areas enough? The yes were a little over 50%, and then we had another 26% that were no's, and then another 22% that were unsure. This question, it's tough to gain a whole lot from it. People may not. People may think of it as available commercial. People may think of it as, do we have enough commercial buildings or structures? So I think that's why we saw a lot of unsurers. I think that probably the question may have could have been tightened up looking at it now. But we'll take that and look at it as well to see if there's anything we can draw from it.
Well, one of the questions had to do with what do we need more of? Dining, restaurants came out high. So that could be a factor in terms of commercial property.
Yeah, I think at least this, if we were working on a future land use plan, this would tell us that we really there doesn't seem to be from the residential side of it a strong push for new commercial areas. So so if you're looking at rezoning from residential to commercial, you would say, well, the residents don't seem to think that there's a need to do that. But again, that we're not looking at rezoning anything, and I think we do have some vacant commercial at this time. So this may just kind of reaffirm some of our goals that we have.
Mine interject a minute. It's maybe personal opinion, but the mountain can't support any more restaurants than they got. You can't have any more good restaurants up there until you have the population to support them, because this is not a destination This is not on the way to someplace. If you're coming to dinner up here, you're coming because this is where you want to come to.
Yeah.
And frankly, there's a lot of draw in Blowing Rock and Banner Elk than there is, you know, you gotta get through those places to get here sometimes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, everybody wants it, but is it a viable, feasible thing?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something we gotta remember when we're,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all this information, you know, the people are responding the best way that they feel or believe, and it's up to you and staff to try to come up with a plan to address their concerns or as best we can. But, you know, we're not going to, there's no miracle cure, so we're going to do the best we can.
anybody disagree with that?
No, I don't disagree. Yeah, what people want versus what's feasible and practical doesn't always match up. But it makes sense that a lot of people are seasonal, so they want convenience and choices. But the practicality of it is, some of the restaurants we have here are, are struggling a little bit as it is. So.
Well, then on the other side of it, most of your restaurants, when you have them all open, up and running, is a time of season where we have a lot of people up here.
Mm-hmm.
And then come our slow months, they can't make any money.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of restaurants come and go up here because of that. You know, they can't support so many restaurants.
Yeah, and I think that we mentioned seasonal economy in one of them, and so I think there was a good response to that, which kind of gives us the idea that most of the residents may, be open to that and understand that we have a seasonal type economy, and it's tough to make business work all year round. But so,
Mr. Chairman, can I add to that a little bit? One thing too, you look at when people want more restaurants. What else? What causes? You said restaurants who are up here need more traffic. Well, some of the things to encourage business growth would be maybe interconnectivity with Eagles Nest, so that people could come from Eagles Nest in. So sometimes if you stand back a little bit and look at the bigger picture, they want that, but then there's some other things. Traffic's going to increase. So anyway, I just want to throw that out. You may already have that on your mind. So
I think that somebody told me that Buckeye Creek Road paving got a lot, and it must be in the raw data because it doesn't show up here.
yeah, I don't think it didn't score as well as I thought it might, but we'll look at it and see. Again, we had, a lot of
That goes right with, making the infrastructure easier to get to.
yeah. This was just a follow-up to the question before, if they thought that we needed more commercial areas. Adjacent to current and a mixture of both sort of scored highly on that. And a lot of these, I'm not going over all the others because there's, obviously those were open-ended questions and people could write whatever. But I will be trying to quantify those in some manner. If I can't really come up with some sort of quantification, I will just give you the raw information and let you kind of look at it as well, just so that you have it.
Which is also a good reason for Jeff Fabry.
Yeah.
And that's what he does for a living.
This was the public transport question. That was one that was on the old survey. We redid it just to see. I think it scored similar to what it did before. I think it may have done slightly higher on the S group, but it wasn't substantial. There was almost 10% of maybes, so we'll look at those as well and see what we can discern from that. Golf carts, again, was, 30% were yes, 52, 51 were no's. There were some unsures and some maybes. That was a split one before. I think it may have been more evenly split before. I'm not sure if the no's have grown, but it certainly is one we'll look at versus the old question. This is about how do you feel about the feasibility, increasing the feasibility of golf carts. The average was less than 3, which was a neutral position. The median came out to 3. This will probably be good to see the distribution, to see where, if there were sort of a lot of 2s and 3s or 2s and 4s, or if there were 1s and 5s and it just kind of averaged out to 3. 1 to 5 being supported of using bikes as a means of travel. That one scored a little higher than golf carts. The mean was about 3.35, so a little higher than a neutral, and then the median was 3.
Well, looking at the last, the what is your age? I'm not too sure how many over. Well, it doesn't split it after 55, but golly, there weren't too many youngsters participated in it.
Yeah.
And I would think, well, if youngsters participated in this, biking would have gone up.
And we can look at some of these questions.
I think that's part of how you have to take that raw data
Yeah.
and analyze it to say, okay, how is this question?
Yeah, and we'll try to separate out those that responded, in a different age group, and say, well, how did they respond versus the older generation, and see if there's a difference in that. And if there is, then we can, I'll certainly present that to you, and that way you'll know that, hey, well, the data may be skewed slightly just because of who responded, but again, we don't know.
Well, I know the next time we ever do this question, we'll certainly go 55, over 65, and over 70.
Yeah, we can break them
get
down.
it split a little more.
This is the Buckeye Creek paving. The median was 4, the mean was 3.69. So yeah, it scored fairly high.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Mm-hmm.
The thing about this question is, I understand how do you rate the paving of Buckeye, but what you can't, I guess, figure out is why do they want it paved? Mm-hmm. Is it because it's a second way out that's not a gravel road? Do they think it's going to bring more business? Do they think that, that might bring more jobs? And I guess there's obviously no way to figure that out, but it's kind of a high-end question without getting the details underneath it.
Yeah, and it is. I think what this might tell us is that there is support for that project, and that's a good goal for us to maintain because there's that support.
Right.
Why we could always go, into like a corridor study or something just to kind of get better idea of why people.
I'm wondering if people would, another question, and it's too late, of course, but another question after that would be, would you support it in lieu of paving other roads within the town?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, we need to, pave Buckeye, which of course we do, mm-hmm. but with the expense of paving all the different roads, would they then decide, well, maybe it's not as important if I can get, this other road paved that mm-hmm. I've been asking to have paved for 15 years? And those are just answers you don't know, but I think those, if we could find that out from people, I think it would be more of a concrete answer about Buckeye. And of course, it's always going to be a goal, but how important is it as opposed to other stuff in paving?
And then we really do have to figure out what makes sense, because you said there's support for it. Mm-hmm. We're not exactly sure why based on who's supporting it, but in the end, I guess the committee and the council has to take the fact that there's support for it and then look at it from the standpoint of the economics and what else is it going to do? Does it satisfy increasing traffic up here? What other benefits might there be? And of course, consider that against cost and priority of doing other roads. So that's where I think our work comes in.
Yeah, and it's not a direct prioritization on here, but I think we did ask the question about paving interconnecting gravel roads, and I think that was scored lower if I recall correctly. So we can, I hate to make assumptions, but we can almost assume that may be a higher priority than connecting roads. But you know, again, that wasn't a ranking or anything that we did, so we're kind of making a leap there, which may or may not be accurate. So. This was an open-ended question that we just kind of put in there to see if there were any diamonds in the rough that people might have great ideas so this will I'll probably just have to send you this information as raw information. I'm not sure if we'll be able to quantify it in any way or not, but it was just, we did get quite a few responses. I think there was 345 people put something, so maybe there's something in there that has some good information, or we can say, oh, we didn't think of that, or whatever.
Can you mention some of the
let's see. Healthy restaurants, create incentive for businesses to want to come up, stay up, and invest in the mountain, increase population to support business, all year round pastry, coffee shop. Let's see, let's scroll down. There's a couple big ones here.
Pastry shop opens next month, I think.
This is sort of a
Good advertising.
Red Pass. Fred's has always had pastry.
Yeah.
But the new one is going to be where the new hairstylist is, just past the entrance of ski area.
Oh, okay.
Parkway
Interesting.
Let's see. Encourage working people to move to beach. I think that was one of our goals.
Preston, were you able to see any kind of similarity with these suggestions where you might have a number of them that are saying more or less the same thing?
I haven't gotten into it that far yet. I'm gonna try to do that over the next month.
Okay,
and
that would be helpful.
If we can come up with some way to quantify it, I will. If not, then I'll give you what we have, and that way you can look at it as well and see if there's anything that stands out to you. But yeah, right now it's just in a raw format of open answers. So. Let's see. Which of the following activities are most important to you? I think this may have been a new question. Everything scored fairly high. Restaurants and entertainment scored the highest with 72%. So I think that it gives an idea of what people enjoy about being up here as well. This one we added was how do you rate the pet friendliness of Beech Mountain? It came in at a little over 4 as the average. The mean was 4, and the median was 4. I'm sorry. How important is it? That one came in a little lower than 4, but still pretty high. And then, in your opinion, does the town have enough pet-friendly amenities? Yes, came in at 64%. And then there was quite a few unshores. Almost a quarter of people put unshore. So I have to look at those and see why people were unsure about it. Maybe they just don't own a pet or don't know what pet-friendly activities are up here or amenities. Quality of life on Beech Mountain, I think we scored very high. Is 4.28 as the average. The median was a 4. So everybody is fairly happy with the quality of life up here. This one we'll have to quantify because it was a sort of open-ended question. Let people type in how many live in their household. And then we had what your primary city and state is. We'll quantify those and get some information on where most of the respondents were, their primary residence was. Employment status, we did have 45% were retired, 41% were employed. Then we had a small group of the others, but pretty evenly split among working and retired. The age, as you talked about earlier, was we had a lot of 55 plus. We could probably break that down in the next survey if we when we do our next update. But we also look at some of these other groups and see if their responses are different than the older group. And I think that was the last question. Any questions or anything on those initial findings? All right.
President,
Yes.
that last question, was that asked in the initial survey?
It was not. It was
It
not.
was not.
We
Would
just
that be a good comparison?
yeah we decided to start trying to get some demographic information on this survey just to kind of get an idea of what people that we also the first time or the last time we didn't do the resident how much time you spend up here, that sort of thing too, so that will give us for the next going forward, it'll give us a better idea of what if we're changing or not, but at this point that's
That one would directly affect your bicycle, but
it may very well, and we'll look at see if there are differences in the groups at least.
Well, I have not so much a question, but maybe a couple of comments.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as the survey itself, I have to say there wasn't a lot that surprised me when I went through it. I think it pretty much followed what I expected, made a lot of sense based on the demographics we have up here. So if anything, I think it confirmed a lot of the direction that we're going in as far as the plan. A couple of comments or questions, though. I'm wondering if it makes sense to try and look at this when you do the analytics, weighted by several things to give more insight. One could be a weighting based on age, on the age distribution. The other could be a weighting based on the amount of time people spend up here, or seasonal versus full-time. The problem with that I see is I'm not sure that the weighting makes sense and from the standpoint of the fact that we really have to serve everyone equally, you know. And on the other hand, if more people are seasonal and we got an older population, it kind of makes sense that we pay a little more attention to that demographic. So that might be something to look into.
Yeah, and I think we will. What I was planning on doing is breaking out some of those demographic and not really weighting them, but analyzing them separately, and that way we'll at least know if there is a difference in preferences or opinions based on these different groups. You know, giving it a weight might be a little challenging. I know what you're saying, but
Right.
To say, well, that give it this much more weight, and
You get into
it gets a little like, well, how much should they or shouldn't they? I mean, I guess we could do it based on our demographics, but again, we're not sure.
the results.
Following in your next steps portion of your.
The results will probably not be too surprising if you look at it weighted based on those criteria.
Yeah.
My other comment was, and this may not be something to do now with regard to the plan, but have we ever established a peer group of similar mountain resort communities to look at, to compare ourselves to?
Not that I'm aware of.
we did initially when we did this one.
You did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm just curious, how we compare to what we would consider to be our peer group. of quiet mountain resort communities. But that might be something interesting to see if that data is available. I know the town that I have that I live in Florida, where I go to seasonally, in the library they have all their plans published, and they're all available for anyone to see. They have a library.
Yeah.
So those plans, for some communities, are publicly available, but it might be something to look at.
Yeah, we can definitely look at. Are you talking about previously you looked at statistics of other communities, or
Like south of Asheville, there's small resort towns that are similar to ours.
yeah,
And locally, they're comparing us to Blowing Rock. What do you mean?
And it's like,
Well, I don't think
time
that's-
out.
That doesn't,
Wrong type of comparison.
yeah, right, they were,
And,
yeah.
you know,
Well, it's going to be really hard to get a comparison.
well, it was hard to find towns that are, and I can't think of the name of it, but it was south of Asheville, into the mountains a little bit.
Mhm.
yeah. There are. I mean,
Sapphire Valley or something like that.
We might find that we're so unique that there's very little comparison
Yeah,
to many.
Well, it's going to be hard to compare another community that's got our altitude. Okay, and our altitude is going to bring a cooler climate.
Mr. Chairman, the board too, really the only way to get any kind of data for comparisons, and I don't know if it will get you what you need, you go to the census and American Community Survey and you do demographics and that type of information, but unless they all do the same survey like this is, you won't know what their attitudes are. But you could get the population breakdowns, whatever the census information has, and compare it that way.
And I know that was taken into consideration in that earlier when they were doing some initial work on this.
And
That does have like jobs, economic development. It's got some things that might be interesting, but I don't know what direction it will send you. But you could actually make comparisons with that. Employed, retired, that type of thing. Say, we have more retired people here than we do in West Jefferson, North Carolina, or something like that.
Yeah, I'm wondering how many other incorporated towns at altitude there really are on the East Coast. I know we're the highest.
yeah.
you're not going to find. Going back
You're right.
to the age, we were thinking about putting more weight on one than the other. We can't forget that those 30, 35-year-olds are the up-and-coming beach mountain. So we don't want to have them shy away from us at all. 20 years ago, everybody was talking about, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Everybody's dying out. They're leaving. We need more young people. Then we implemented all these plans of hiking trails and outdoor fitnesses, and it did it. It brought a lot more younger people to Beach Mountain.
That's a good point.
So we can't go with the popular vote. We have to look at that long term.
Yeah, and I think that I'll be able to separate out those that responded in those age groups, and we can look at their specific preferences versus the majority. That may give us some idea. And there may be areas where there are significant differences in the preferences. There may be areas that we can see in that to include in the plans.
Good point.
All right.
Thank you, Preston. Which brings the next steps is getting that further definition and seeing where it impacts the chapters, as we mentioned earlier. Do we have any other business? All right. I did have one thing. If you'll notice on the table out there, there's a request from Avery County Chairman or County Manager. They are looking at developing a 5-year plan or strategy for Avery County. It behooves us to pick those up, look at them, and submit them to Philip Barrier. And I'd save a copy for our own planning board people too, if this public would so choose to do.
You mean they're making it available to us, or
They're asking for our input.
Oh, asking for our
Okay,
input.
and in fact, Joe got one right here for you. A blank. Well, the blank's right out there.
Yeah.
Pick one up and look at it. That's the only outside business that I had. John, any closing comments?
None whatsoever. Good job on this
Yeah.
report right here.
I mean, I can't say enough. This is more of a listening deal to me because I'm brand new into it. But it seems like we've got a lot of stuff to go through, and to get things right for Beach Mountain. But, I'm up for the task.
And do you have one of these?
No, sir.
All right, we'll make sure that you get
I don't
one of the old ones, because it's the ones that we're rewriting. Joe?
Well, I think it's, I think the process that we've followed has been very constructive, and now fine-tuning the plan to kind of match or support the input from the residents and the public is going to be key, and then us translating that into whatever changes need to be made. So I think this is the process. If it's taken another month or two, so be it. I think we had to do what the time needed. The other thing is I just want to congratulate the council on updating our video and audio conferencing abilities. I think that's going to help the town and all of us tremendously. Good move.
Robbie?
No, I have no comments on this.
All righty.
A lot of info.
Mr. Chairman, can I say one thing?
Yes, sir.
I just want to also thank Preston for his service. He actually, February 19th, he will have been with the town of Beach Mountain for 1 year. So as soon as he got here, he started working on the comprehensive plan. So I'd just like to bring that up. So I won't tell you how old he is or anything embarrassing. Anyway, I just want to mention that. So time does fly when you're having fun. Thank you.
He's doing a good job.
Thank you.
He's been here and his hair hasn't turned gray yet. That's amazing.
Color. We'll entertain a motion
Anyways,
to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
All right.
Motion carries. We are adjourned. We're going to have to dig around and find one. Have you got an extra one? Okay. Because it's a pretty good guideline. I've got all kinds of notes in mine.
I guess we'll pass through this more and more we go down the line.
The only check we have approved right now is 1 and 3 barrels.
I mean, you've got a lot of things out there we were just talking about that haven't even been discussed yet, like the biking side of it. What about bike lanes? We're going to put bike lanes on. Designated road. What's your golf carts? We're talking about summertime only. We're talking about nobody's going to be walking down that road, or they will try to. Winter with the golf cart.
That's a long way.
Okay.
I can tell you, bike lanes in the street, that's a state. That's going to be fun.
That's going to be really tough.
Okay.
I'll be right back. And you know how bikers want to stay away from all that gravel. That's what on the side of the road. All that gravel is going to kick off too.
Robbie, thank you.
Make sure the lights are off.
Okay.
Can you turn mine off?
Yep.